Sitting by the Fire, a podcast on ancestral wisdom, medicine, heritage, and transformation by Hodinöhsö. Hello, everyone. A very good morning or afternoon. Thank you for being here with us today, sitting by the fire. And my dear Teagan West, my colleague, is here from Ancestral Lineage Healing. Thank you for accepting this invitation. And would you please present yourself? Who is Teagan? Who are you today?
Thank you for that. Thanks for the invitation in so many ways. Something that's on my heart is recently I heard the Irish, the way they ask for your who are you is who do you belong to? And that's just
Okay.
feeling alive for me and thinking of myself as everything that shaped me. So I would say I'm currently a steward on Seneca land and very much building relationship with this place that raised me. I'm also a descendant of people that come from Ireland and Syria and Lebanon and Egypt and Anishinaabe territory, a little bit north of here in what is now Canada. I'm a daughter, I'm a partner, a sister, a bunny mom. And in my own kind of work and practice, I focus quite a bit on astrology and a kind of animist relationship to the sky as also a reflection of the land. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm a community member and very much involved in ritual here on Turtle Island with those that, yeah, I'm in constant relationship with, which is a real gift. And I come from map makers and astrologers and people that, yeah, diviners, I'll say it that way, people that were very much involved with the spirit world and the unseen. And that has been a very big part of my upbringing. So that's who I come from. Yeah.
Okay. That's who you belong to.
That's who I
And
belong to. Yeah.
I love this question and how you name all those parts, because our identities are a band of many things. It's not just one thing. And I remember when we recently met in Madrid in person, and you were telling me that, oh, you're making maps of the sky. And I was like, wow, what a beautiful name it is to astrology, to say that you're not just reading it, but you're in a way mapping it. So how is mapping related, if it is, with you coming into the ancestral work?
I love that question so much. Yeah, it's very tender actually. I will say the first piece is that my dad is literally a map maker. So my dad, since I was born, has been making maps of the land in what is now New York State, and I he kind of brought me under his wing growing up.
Wow.
So there's a way that he was experiencing the world that wasn't just about topography, but it was about relationships. And he also studied to be a meteorologist. And so there was this really constant attention to what was happening in the sky and what was happening in the land. And if to him, it wasn't an animist practice, it was just like the way he was experiencing reality. But it definitely gave me an attunement to how our relationship to the architecture of reality is, how to say, it's like how we're inhabiting the world. And I think of it both ways with maps in general, is like maps can be used to bridge relationship and make meaning, right? Like when my relationship to the night sky is ancestral, it's the sense that our people thousands of years ago were also looking to the sky and as a kind of blank canvas in some way that they could actually cast their stories into the sky. And so when I think about maps, I think about stories and the way they're telling us something about our relationship to the land or our relationship to the sky that it becomes a dialogue that to a certain degree we depend on for our survival. Like my people that lived in the desert, I know were using the sky to navigate. If you've spent time in that kind of vast, formless terrain, it's like, of course, that was the way they were locating themselves, right? And I'm very mindful at the same time, and I think that this has come up through my relationship to maps in general, even with like ancestral mapping of our lineages, right? Is how maps can also be used in somewhat harmful ways to tell a story of the land that is in someone's particular narrative, right? A colonial narrative or some other way. So it's both, right? And for me, I'm very curious in my own practice right now of like how can we use our maps and actually kind of re-envision them? Because the maps that we inherited are a very particular lens of how to be in the world, right? Our maps of culture are very limited to a particular colonial worldview. So it's like going back to recover the ancestral maps that are in the land, that are in our bodies, and navigating from that place. Um, yeah, that feels super alive. Thanks for the
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
And I hear you saying that maps are connected to stories. So it's like retelling older forgotten stories, maybe stories that have become myth, but then bringing them back to reality in some way and allowing them to inhabit our bodies and we inhabiting them again with our own bodies.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, um, I like to call it like the own pulsation of a land. I don't know
Mhm.
if you felt it, but I think that some lands have this very particular, as if it was pulsating. What comes to my mind was that I was lucky enough to visit Machu Picchu in Peru as part of my old life in a different work trip, doing different works around elections. I went to Lima and we took 3 days just to go and visit it. And there was a land where I felt like, oh my God, these mountains are still growing. And you can
Mm.
feel this like gross energy that wants to touch the sky and how the earth is just
Mm.
growing toward them. And since then, I think, and I don't know, what do you think about it? We may have had this capacity, humans, to actually feel the land and its pulsation below our feet when we were closer to it.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh, so many chills. Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think about how much, to your point of like we may have been actually experiencing this landscape differently. You know, it's a reality that our ancestors' minds were very different than ours are now, right? And even the ways that our own conditioning creates this kind of um, myth of individualism, right? Of individuality, it cuts us off from those ways of sensing, right? And the mind is such a fickle interface because whatever stories we tell ourselves about how to inhabit the landscape, we believe them, right? So if we believe that we can't feel those other beings around us, that's the experience we're going to be having, right? There's a really beautiful book called Ecologies of Ecstasy that talks about
Mm.
this kind of different interface that the human-shaped peoples have from like the plant-shaped peoples. And that, yeah, the brain itself becomes this intermediary between our ability to fully like experience the world around us. And the plants don't have that. The plants are constantly interwoven and not filtering it through mind in the way
Mm.
that
Mm.
we do with this
Mm.
organ, right? So it just makes me think about this piece around like what is it like to give way to this kind of vegetal nature as the author of that book speaks about the part of us that knows what it's like to sense as a plant senses, you know, that
Oh, I love
has
that.
this
That's
like
beautiful.
older, yeah, and it's such a, I'm like, what are the limitations of my human shape, you know? And what happens when I don't equate intelligence to just the organ of the brain? You know, that there are other ways of knowing through this body. So,
Mm.
so much in there. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And what brought you
Mm.
close to working with the ancestors? How did that happen? If
Yeah, that's such a good question. How did it happen? You know, through a storytelling lens of like how I got here, the real sense of it was I was working as an Ayurvedic doctor for many years before I came to this work. And every time I was working with someone, when I would ask them if what they were experiencing is also something their parents or their grandparents experienced, the answer was literally always yes. And I started to get really caught up in that, where I'm like, whoa, how can I tend to this individual if I can also track that what they're experiencing is an echo of something older than them, right? And so it was a strange, but also I see now the intelligence of like the nudge to be like, go a little deeper here. Yeah, because I was treating symptoms, right? I was like trying to help people, even in Ayurveda, so much of it is about root cause. And I'm like, but the root cause are the ancestors. Yeah, it's like way
Exactly. It's
older.
far behind. Yeah.
Exactly. So I got to this point where I just actually turned my attention fully to that origin kind of cause. And I found Daniel's work and kind of moved into this space now where it feels, in my experience, just more helpful actually to be tending those um, like what's further up the river rather than trying to just pull people out of the river downstream, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Hmm. And what is the impact that you see, if you see, since you switched your line of work to that? How do you experience, um, I don't want to call it results because I don't think that's a work that finishes anytime. I think it's like a constant being in relationship with the ancestors. But what do you see? How did it change your work and how do you see
Hmm.
where it goes from there? Can you
Yeah,
really go to the root upriver?
right, right. It's such a that's where I'm sitting. It's like, but the thing that comes up for me is that I think what it did was it expanded, especially like in myself, but also in the people that I work with. It's like it expanded our ecology for what actually is influencing our state of
Mm,
being at any given
mm,
moment. And that can be simultaneously overwhelming, as it is simultaneously relieving to be like, whoa, if I let myself be held by this, I no longer have to over-identify with holding this alone, and I can actually weave myself back into resource that says, I understand now that what I'm experiencing is an echo of something much older that has been unresolved. And especially where I'm at in my practice now, it's like I know better than to think that that's going to get resolved in my generation. But I can start the work of unraveling that and actually then hand down what I learned to the generations to come. And even if I don't have children, right? It's like to allow my own process of starting to unravel those larger wounds or, yeah, just unresolved stories in many ways. And say, like, here's what I learned, take that and keep going. So it allowed me to expand this sense of like the continuum. I
mm,
love,
absolutely.
yeah, and I love this piece. I'm studying Anishinaabe Moen a bit, and the word for ancestor in Anishinaabe is Anakubajigan. And there's a little word, the language is built up from many words, but Anak is this piece that insinuates like a link in a chain. It insinuates something that we are intricately bound to. And you use the same word for your grandparent as you do for your grandchild. It's like I am you
Wow,
and you are me.
beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so it's like it's in there. It's always been in there. That we are this kind of continuum and that at the same time my own story is intimately my own and it's also so much bigger than me, to hold um that space between. Yeah.
Mm, mm, thank you.
Yeah.
And you started our chat now that you like this Irish question, who do you belong to? And now you speak about your story, and my sense is that you're also a storyteller in some ways. Is that okay if I ask a question around that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because I hear some pieces, and the pieces is like the myth of individualism, which I think it's not even a myth. It's a myth. But it's also some sickness. Like we've lost some um, the deep understanding of belonging. So like we believe in a way, and I want to include myself because it's not alien from me. So I think we have been there, or we're there, we're going to be there,
Mm.
that we start to tell our stories as if it was only us.
Mm.
And if the deeds, good or bad, it doesn't matter, would be my deeds. And actually who I am would finish where the barrier of my skin is holding me. And when I hear you saying that these are the people I belong, this is even being a bunny mom,
Mm.
like I think that there is some hints of different belongings. So I'm really curious of your story. I know we don't have a full night of storytelling, but as we are sitting here by the fire with some spirit fire together, would you tell your story
I
of
love.
belonging or finding belonging?
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, my story of finding belonging. You know, what's there for me is the tenderness. Oh, yeah. The story of finding belonging
Mm.
in otherness.
Ah, yes.
And, because the really, like, if I'm being totally honest, the mark of my childhood, there's a lot of otherness in my story. There's a lot
Mhm.
of, and it's so sacred, right? I heard a friend of mine say this recently, that it's often people's who experience otherness by whatever form, by just being, a misfit, right? A sensitive misfit, as I call myself, or people that are marginalized, different forms of like living in the fringes. Um, my friend was like, those folks are often closer to the other world, right? And so at the same time, it creates this proximity and this intimacy with what's happening just out of view. And for me, that's so much of where I found belonging and continue to, is like in these spaces that we have actually cast into exile. Most importantly, the other than human world, right? And the unseen world. And so, without getting into the nitty-gritty of like every, part that kind of shaped me in that, I feel so grateful at this point in my life, actually, to have trusted myself to belong to something other than human. And
Mm.
to have stayed with that, even though there were moments throughout my life, I grew up as a dancer and as an artist, and so there was a lot that I was processing all the time that was sometimes really hard to be with, around the sense of where do I belong, right? But I
Mm.
see now that that question is so much bigger than I had language or framework for, right? It's like, what does it mean to belong as a child of diaspora? What does it mean to belong as, someone who is in touch with the spirit world in a culture that says it's not real? These ways that I just have so much kindness for my younger self's persistence to to trust that what I was experiencing was real and valid, even if there were no maps for it in our culture? And so I think that's the beauty too of like, what do you do when the maps you were handed don't really work for you? Like, um,
Absolutely.
it's a really holy calling to say, well, let me go, like, try to find
Yeah.
um, the ones
Let
that
me
do.
become an explorer of
Yeah.
unknown lands.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that is also important
Mm.
that we belong to ourselves in that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Because then it's difficult to belong to others if we don't have that very intimate relationship with ourselves.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think when there is an othering in the relationship with the word and ourselves, that kind of becomes the most important thing that that I find some rooting in this self that I'm given, because some things are given. I'm not talking about the personality, but the families we are born to, the circumstances we're born to, how the world is built up around it, and how everything belongs together or not, and the division, how it shows up, and the belief system. So everything around it.
Yep.
And sometimes it's very difficult to find that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember that sometimes in the old times, when there were no mobile phones and you didn't have a map and you went for an excursion, like when you didn't want to get lost, you were kind of picking up some trees or some other objects in the field now to find back. So I think that this um, that's like there are some strings around some important parts inside as well as outside when you speak about belonging. And I'm really curious because I know, so this podcast will come in full moon in August. So you're already in the course that you're offering in Ancestral Medicine, the Animist Connections course. And I know that for you, animals are really important, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that my question is, because maybe someone is listening to us who is really longing to belong, what could be, and it's kind of conscious for me to bring animals in, because I know that when I was really in a bad place as a young person, animals were like, yes, please. I trust you. I belong to you. We are one. Please tell me that we are one. So how do you see this from an animist perspective? How can like an animist perspective actually help us to find belonging?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah. I think that's just the most important thing to me right now too. So I'm grateful for it. I think what comes, and just to kind of lay the foundation for how I maybe describe animism, is the acknowledgement of other beings around us that aren't human, right?
Mm.
Having a personhood. And in
Yes.
having a personhood, that means that they are people. They're different kinds of people that we can be in relationship with, right? And that brings a whole other layer that I'm exploring right now of like, okay, well, what does relationship then mean of our responsibility to one another, right? But I think I see this a lot in just the way the wounds of culture move through us and live in our bodies, and the kind of severance of individualism. Um, it's so lonely to
Yeah.
believe that there aren't other kinds of people than the human people, right? Not only is it a kind of, unfortunately supremacist orientation, it's also just really lonely. And
Yes.
it serves this psychological function that leads us to believe we are an island, and that the world isn't reaching back towards us in the same way we reach towards it. I've been walking with this question lately of how grateful I feel for this land where I live. And the reverse of that is like, what would it be like for the land to feel grateful for me? Like, can I let that in? Like, can I actually,
Mm.
in acknowledging the personhood of the land and its intelligence and its animacy, right? It's like, oh, then it's experiencing me as much as I'm experiencing it, or
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
so, yes, it brings, and it's tender work and it's slow work, right? Because in many ways, we bring all of the stuff that comes up for us in relating with other humans to the land or to the unseen world, right? Um, and so it's like
Mm.
moving slowly in that, because if we have, you know, uh, for me, I'll speak personally, like the difficulty in receiving love and care. Oof, do I bring that to the land? Wowee, where I'm like, can I
Yeah.
let that in?
Yeah.
For the land to feel grateful for me, right? But I say that to also almost like really simplify the way that rebuilding this relatedness that animism is at its
Mm.
core. It's not a belief, right? It's an orientation towards
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
it's so, in some ways, it's like, what do we know of being in relationship with anyone, right? Whether it's my mom or the lavender, like how can I be in that inquiry? And I like something that Daniel 4 talks about in how we kind of relate to the land in a funny way when we come towards it with like, when we come to the plants with like, okay, what are you good for? Like, what can you help me heal? Or we
Yeah,
come to the
utility.
omens, right? And it's like, would you do that to a human? Like, what are you good for? What can you help me with? So the
I'm
sense
sure it
too.
exists, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, I know, right? So that's it too, is like how do we stay in that space of like show me, like who are you? You know, what don't I know about who you are beyond all of my stories? Yeah.
Yes, I think this is our quest in a way to everyone, that who I am beyond my stories, or how can I stay in relationship beyond what I believe a relationship has to be, no? Because maybe it's different. So in many cases, also what I see in my clients and in everyone around us, that we're kind of a prisoner of our thought systems, and this is how I relate, this is how things has to be, and it happens to me as well. So I think that it's like so difficult to cultivate an openness in the mind, because the mind has this tendency that like going super quick, and many things take time. So for instance, the body needs time to respond. No, when we speak about the somatic and how it feels and what happens in the body, it's like it's I need to go to the body and feel it. So maybe in the relationship that you speak about, is it like that too? You need to give some space, maybe in your body or in other senses that communicate through the body, not always through the mind.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think too, this is a question I've been walking with is what does it mean to move at the pace of relationship, right? Not at my pace, but at a pace that holds me and you, right?
Yes, exactly.
So big, and it's going to be different and whoever we're relating with. Um, but I think it kind of goes back to this piece too around that, how to say this, the ways that the mind is sometimes an unhelpful interface. Like if I'm orienting towards relationship from the mind, I'm in this kind of subject object dynamic, right? Where I'm like,
Exactly. What
hey,
are you good for?
yes, yes. And
Mm.
even this like sense of, honestly, this sense of separation of like this is Tegan and those are the waters or those
Yeah.
that's the mugwort, right? And that we're not connected to each other. I'm me and you're you, right? And so there's actually something interesting and it kind of goes back to this piece around the vegetal nature of like what's it like for the mugwort to not have a brain and it's just
Oh yeah.
in direct experience all the time? It's like, what's that like to consider for ourselves? To almost like drop the fourth wall a bit. And I try that sometimes as a practice. I was doing it the other day here with the river on the land here. I was like, I'm just going to take a moment to drop the story that we're separate from each other and
Mhm.
experience myself as the water too, right? And almost try to notice what that's like to, yeah, drop that barrier for a moment, right? Knowing that, of course, we're embodies, there's all these other limitations, but it's more a state of like letting those qualities of being start to kind of dance with each other. Um,
Mm.
so it's all about, it's tricky because it does come down to perception and the vantage point that we're taking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. How to become water. That's like coming back to Bruce Lee, who said, "Do you like water?" Sorry. But yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. And I'm sitting with a quote. I'm going to search. There is a, I think either he's from Canada or the US. I'm sorry, I don't remember. An author called Ray Nyler, and he's writing science fiction and fantasy. And There was one called Mountain in the Sea.
Mm.
It's a beautiful novel. So if you want to go and read it, I recommend everyone. I'm going to put here in the description something. And it's a quote from this book because I think it will just land so beautifully for what you said. And he quotes another writer, a fictional writer in his book. So, but it's beautiful. It's about the difference of human beings and other beings living in the sea, like the octopus, who is a very different bodied person, no, in a way. So here it goes. We are shaped and limited by our skeletons. Jointed, defined, structured. We create a world of relationships that mirrors that shape, a world of rigid boundaries and binaries, a world of control and response, master and servant.
Mm.
In our world, as in our nervous system, hierarchy rules.
That's it.
I just love it.
That was perfect.
It's just so nailed, no? Because
Yeah.
because as a body therapist, I also know, the shapes and the forms and the weight and the structure. So there is a certain possibility, and then a certain angle is not possible because of the structure that you hold in. So if we go with I think in English it's called the Emerald table.
Oh yeah, yes, Emerald
Yeah.
Tower. Yeah,
Yeah, the remote table. Yeah, the one like as below, as
yeah.
above, and all that stuff. So really, our relationships must be shaped as we are because that's who we are. So what you speak about in that understanding is like opening the window and taking on different shapes and forms and inviting it like actively to be part of the knowledge of who you are and who you belong to in that way.
Yeah, yeah, it comes back to this question you brought around like can we sense through our feet, right? Like what's it like to inhabit or in some ways it's like what else is actually available to us in this body that we maybe
Hmm.
just didn't have access to through our scaffolding, through our story, you know? And what can the land teach us about other ways of knowing, right?
Exactly.
It's like this is it. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just love it when a storyteller invents a story or tells a story that's just so invisibly can shape the reader. Because
Hmm.
sometimes you don't feel that what you read is changing you. But this is why I'm an absolute fan of science fiction and some fantasies because it really changes your nervous system in a way. Because inhabiting different possibilities, that's what really changes you. And when we are stuck without another possibility, I think this is what keeps us in rigidity in some way.
Yes. Yeah, and I love this too because it's something I've been thinking about in how we're hoping to reshape culture, right? In a way, it's like it becomes very important to be in an inquiry around our own limitations and the familiar shapes that we take. And I forget where I heard it. If I think of it, I'll send it to you. But I heard recently in a conversation, there was this point made about, I think it might have been Susan Raffo's work, where it was this sense of receiving information about the world we want to create from the land, right? Like
Mm.
there's really again expanding our ecology for different kinds of intelligence, things that we can't see in our limited human shape. And not only our body, but also, the scaffolding that is familiar to us from the
Yeah.
past, right? We
Yeah.
move in these ways, and it's in our bodies, of course, but it was this sense of like, if we want to begin to reshape culture in meaningful ways, it's like we got to ask the land and we got to ask this kind of ancient knowledge that comes from the larger ecosystem that we're a part of. And there's a piece there that's important to me around recognizing, that we are an emanation of that ecology. We're not functioning separate from it. But so often we build the structures in our world as if we were separate from it, and that's what creates destructive systems, right? So it's this beautiful homecoming into belonging that actually it helps us move where we want to move towards collectively at the
Yes.
same time, you know? It's less about going somewhere else and more about coming home in my experience.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yes, more about coming home and maybe more about opening the gates and allowing the words to come to you in some
Yep.
way.
Yep. Yep.
Because at least the wind is available in the cities as well.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it needs us to feel it on our face. And I
Mm,
think with the very hot summers that especially in Europe are now presently, that's like I realize how difficult it is to walk in concrete. Like
mhm,
and this is why like in the center of Barcelona where I live, like there is so hot even when you go out of the street after the sun sets, because it's like the concrete, it brings back all the
mm,
warmth and hot that it was absorbing during the day. So
yeah.
like I find myself craving trees when I
Yeah.
go
I
out.
bet. Yeah.
It's something like
Yeah.
that.
Yes. It's so real. Yeah. Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone, Tegan, who is
Mm.
maybe new to relating with other than human beings or
Mm.
relating to the ancestors? What would be a good first step and how to walk this path?
Mm. Oh, it's such a big question. And so simple too, you know, in a way it's um I think about lately just starting by introducing ourselves, you know.
Yes,
It's
a
so
good point.
simple.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I think this is an edge for lots of people, but I find it to be extremely helpful for kind of starting to get out of the way a little bit, is trying to also like talk out loud with them, right? It's when I say introduce yourself, I mean like tell tell your story out loud, and notice what that's like. Because I think it's very easy to get in our own head when we're just trying to like stubbornly like perceive
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
force it, you know? But there's
Absolutely.
something vulnerable about the vocalizing. Yeah.
Yeah. And something that leaves the body and joins the unseen through the vibration of our vocal cords and our breath that leaves the body. That's maybe already an alchemy to speak out loud to unseen or other than human visible things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and two, I think it's as it relates to the ancestors, as it relates to even the landscape around us, even just, you know, earlier this morning there was a little ladybug crawling on my knee, and I'm like, let
Oh,
me be with her for a minute here, you know? Um, I think it's orienting towards, I really love how language can shift our experience of relationship from what into who, you know, and just being in this inquiry around like, who are you? To sit with the ladybug and be like, who are you? It gives her personhood back, you know?
exactly.
Um,
That's beautiful.
that, yeah, yeah,
And that already changes, that already brings relationship in the equation where there was nothing before.
exactly. Yeah, there was subject object before, and now there's we. Like now we're in conversation. Um, yeah.
I love that. Thank
Mhm.
you. Thank you very much. I feel that this is a beautiful point, maybe to pause and maybe find other topics for future connections
Yeah,
within the
absolutely.
podcast. Thank you so much, Tegan, to be here with me, with us. And if you are interested, you can find Tegan's information down here. And we hope you enjoyed as much as we did. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.